Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and for the next hour, I've got a pretty special broadcast for you guys. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be aware of Dr. Shiva as he has been making his rounds on all sorts of social media in the past few months. You can go to Shiva, the number 4, Senate.com to sign up to vote for him. And, we were just talking about his run, and unfortunately, I have somebody in the comments section saying that there's a flaw in the MA ballot system. When they try to put 0 in the front of their zip code, Mr. Shiva, they're not allowed to do so. And there are a lot of these that start with 0. So this may be yet another hurdle that you have to overcome to try and get on that ballot. How are you today, sir? Can't hear you all of a sudden. Your audio just went out.
I'm not sure what the MA ballot system is. I'm not sure what they're talking about, but our stuff does work on our website, so we can talk more about that.
Okay.
It could be that the Massachusetts government doesn't want things to work, but that's a different thing. But so what do we want to talk about today?
Well, what I'd like to talk about first, sir, is give my audience a background. Now, I'm obviously familiar because, I've seen some of your stuff, but how you even got into politics, what your background is, what you are a doctor of. I know that you've studied at MIT and other places. Just give everybody a short summary of who you are.
Sure. Well, I'm a scientist. My name is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. I'm an MIT PhD in a field called biological engineering, but that's only one of the things, that I've done. The other thing is I have 3 other degrees from MIT, a total of 4 degrees in fields of engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, which is my bachelor's. My master's is in applied mechanics and mechanical engineering, and I also have a degree in visual studies and design. But I'm a Fulbright scholar. I mean, I don't want to go through all my resumes. People can go look it up. But I'm a professional scientist and an engineer. I've done many companies. I created the world's first email system when I was a 14-year-old kid. Created a number of companies in the area of biology and computing, including the arts. But I'm an inventor and a scientist.
All right, excellent. So here we are in April of 2020, living in a very bizarre and odd world globally, especially for us who, expect personal freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And in a very short order, these things have been eviscerated based on this, COVID1984 virus. Now, for myself, I spent yesterday my video talking about a lot of the treatments and solutions outside of the vaccines that are being used that are not being discussed by the mainstream media. Everything from the intravenous vitamin C and hydrocortisone injections to even TML, which I haven't seen discussed really anywhere, to them now using nitric oxide in a gas form for people that hopefully don't have to go on ventilators. They're going to use a CPAP and BiPAP. You obviously have the hydroxychloroquine and zinc. You have the Z-Pak. You have several other antivirals. There are people talking about MSC stem cell treatment. So I guess where I would like to start with you is, number one, how do you think we should be treating this? Because obviously I've seen your stuff and talking about having a strong immune system and how some things may work for one person and may not work for another because we're all different. What do you think is the strongest way to go about medically solving this issue?
Well, it comes back to first principles, Jason. The reality is that the immune system is the operating system of the human body. And that immune system spans multiple subsystems. Your innate, your adaptive, your interferon system, your microbiome, your virome, your neural systems, your lymphatic system, your gut-brain axis. It's essentially ubiquitous. And I think first begins medically understanding that. And it may seem something so foreign because most people, the typical MD, does not study the immune system. They frankly do not know it's an engineering system. So before we can talk about any of these solutions and talk about, well, do this or that, you got to go back to foundational principles. And this is something very important because what's occurred in this country is people have been taught that you can sort of just be a talking head. You can talk about whatever you want. You can go to get a degree and you don't have to really learn. You don't have to do the hard work and learn math, and you don't have to learn engineering. You don't have to learn science. We've created a lot of fluffy fields. And the talking heads on TV have no idea what they're talking about. They watch Oh, Shiva's got he's getting a bunch of views over there. Let's start talking about Fauci now, Tucker Carlson, for example, right?
Mhm.
Let's start talking about this. But the people talking about this or enunciating this or articulating this they haven't put in their time. They don't have the chops to even talk about it. So the fundamentals is you have to have people and have an educational system that understands science and engineering and physics. And what the science and engineering and physics, when you apply to biology, show you is that the immune system is a very, very complex system. The notion of one person from top telling everyone to do top down is never going to work. That's not how medicine works. It has to be done one-on-one. So that's a first principle. If someone thinks that the government is going to tell you what to eat and the government's going to mandate all these vaccines, that goes against the antithesis of engineering principles. That would be like the government saying to you, oh, your car has a carburetor problem. Now everyone must use this carburetor, right? Or your car has this problem. Now everyone must do this. I hope that's clear. That would be a top-down model of solving problems when it has never, ever worked. Okay, it fails miserably because things need to be decentralized, but it begins with this understanding of the immune system. The immune system is a very complex engineering system, and only recently have we figured out components of it. The vaccination model that came out to vaccinate everyone is based on a science that's literally 100 to 150 years old. And 4 months ago, I presented at the National Science Foundation at the distinguished lecture, sharing the modern view of the immune system. Was well accepted. A lot of engineers in the room, a lot of scientists, and no one had an issue when I said, look, giving one size fits all model of medical interventions like vaccination doesn't make any sense. There is no engineers get this. The people who don't get this are the educated, vulnerable elites who are taking some course on how aardvarks the psychology of aardvarks, okay? Or they're studying political science, okay? We need to go back where people actually get their hands dirty, like plumbers and electricians, because those people get this. So it goes down to the foundational educational system. And the fact is, no one in the mainstream media, from CNN, Fox News, Laura Ingraham, could be nice people. No one is having a discourse on the immune system. Why? Because the entire model of getting on TV and talking is about being in the clique, right? Looking a certain way, acting a certain way. It's not about serving people, because to serve people, you have to put in your time. You have to do your math problems. You have to sit there late at night. You have to understand physics and engineering and how to build a building. I'm talking about carpenters. These guys really good carpenters actually know a lot. So we have a set of people who are articulating to us, including MDs. If anyone thinks your medical doctor knows the immune system, you're out of your mind. The medical doctor, I hate to break this, he may be in his nice lab coat and with a stethoscope, and he comes to you looking nice, caring. They're very caring people, but they know nothing about the immune system. They do not, first of all, understand it's a system. They don't understand how nutrition works. So that's where we have to start. We have to understand the problem here. So you have to break down a lot of walls where people start thinking that the person that they're talking to knows what they're talking about.
Well, you know what? And just to break one of those walls right now and talk about one of those, top-down solutions that's absolutely ludicrous. Folks, this is not the Babylon Bee. This is not the Onion. This is Tony Fauci literally saying yesterday, and I quote, "I don't think we should ever shake hands ever again, to be honest with you." That is something this man said in a press conference yesterday. You can't tell me that transhumanism isn't a part of this, and they're not trying to get us accustomed to not be human beings. Can you imagine not greeting somebody and shaking their hand? A lot can be told with a handshake. And let's speak to that. I mean, how do you feel about all of this social distancing, quarantining, comments like that one, that we should never shake hands again, being put out by the mainstream? I mean, is there any positivity to this? Are these stark realities, or is this on top of what I think is biological warfare being played out against the people, psychological warfare as well?
Well, Jason, just go back to, I hate to answer with a question. I rarely do that, but based on what I told you, what do you think about it?
Well,
Based on what
I
just
think
shared with you.
100%. I mean, look, no matter what you think about this virus and how deadly it is, and I'm in New York State, I'm starting to see the patients come up. I was the boss before I was doing this full time again. I ran a bar where I had 20
Mm.
plus girls here. I'm by Hartwick University in SUNY Oneonta. They have a huge nurses program. I've got one in Stony Brook right now. I've got one in Brooklyn. Actually in Queens, I've got another person in Brooklyn who's a male I know, and they're dumbfounded by this. Okay, and when they look at it from a physical perspective, for instance, one of the nurses is like, well, once we intubate people, and even they're starting to admit this on the mainstream, depending on what hospital they're out, you have a 70 to 90% chance of dying. So that's the last thing you want to do is be put on a ventilator. And yet that seems to be the overarching solution. We need 20,000 ventilators. We need 30,000 ventilators. Well, if you're going to use those and you're only, let's give them the best number, 70% out of 20,000, that's a frightening number. That's 14,000 people that aren't going to make it. So to me, I think there is an aspect of psychological warfare. I think when you look at this virus, for instance, and the fact that those that do survive sometimes have cystic fibrosis afterwards, or that we're not even talking much about the x-rays that are being done. And one thing I'd really love to talk to you about is what exactly are they testing? Because now we have 3 different types of tests, I believe. You can go with the x-rays where they're looking at lungs directly. You can go with the swab, and now they're talking about a blood test. Well, Cuomo has been very open that New York State will not reopen until everybody is tested for one of those 3 things. So either you had it and you got better and you got the antibodies, you currently have it, or you don't have it, never had it, and you're going to need the vaccine. Those are all frightening to me. So I guess to pull it back, because, I kind of answered your question with a question. What are these tests? Please tell me, because again, I'm a layman. I'm going off of all these different studies. I'm going off what I see in the mainstream media. I'm going off doctors that are now going on YouTube and talking about what they're seeing firsthand. What do you think they're testing for right now?
Well, one is you can look at the actual symptoms of what occurs when someone is infected, right? And so one is what you're talking about, the x-rays, and these things are the symptoms of what people feel. Or you're testing by, asking questions, right? How do you feel, et cetera. The other thing is people are actually doing what's called a polymerase chain reaction test, a PCR test, where they're looking for a piece of the nucleotide from that virus through a series of, reagents, et cetera. And that test sometimes is taking 2 days, sometimes it's taking 14 days. So you're trying to detect the virus in the body, right? Or you're trying to find the antibody within that virus. So these are multiple ways. So one is you look at someone, wow, he looks and smells and quacks like a duck, it must be a duck, right? And it's based on that kind of diagnosis. The other is you're doing some detail analysis, like you're looking at the x-rays and you're seeing this kind of scarring, particular behavior in the lungs, right? But I think the more important issue is this, that who are these people who are dying and being, there's 4 things that I wrote to the president. There are 4 different kinds of people. The people who get COVID-19, who are positively showing up for it, which, by the way, it's difficult to show with the PCR test. There's false positives. The other people are people who are immunocompromised. And then there's another group of people who are critically ill. And then you have the healthy people, the 4th group. But the people who are critically ill, let's focus on them, because they're being put on ventilators right now. And the ventilators, in my opinion, when you have a cytokine storm taking place, your lungs are literally getting ripped apart, okay? The alveoli are filling up with fluid. And then because when the alveoli fill up with fluid, it's basically simple physics. You have lower volume, which means pressure is going to be higher, and you're sending in more high pressure. You're going to start ripping up. Essentially, you're causing further edema. You're popping off. You're creating oxidative species, particularly some of the recent data showing you're popping off, the iron off the heme groups. So what this does is you're essentially accentuating that cytokine storm, and you're basically killing people. Instead of addressing the root cause issue, that's what engineers try to do. We try to address root cause issues. People want to push vaccines. Hospital administrators want to buy ventilators because they're getting kickbacks. They don't want to solve the root cause issue. The root cause issue is, why is there a cytokine storm? Why is this person's body filling up with fluid? It could be whatever it is. It could be COVID. It could be pneumonia. Forget all that, okay? The issue is that they are filling up with fluid in their lungs. This is because the immune system is overreacting, and you need to address that. Well, the way you address that is one of the proven ways to address that. And by the way, hydroxychloroquine doesn't help that. It's more of a prophylactic in the beginning process. What it will work for, what vitamin C will do is it'll really help address that cytokine storm, because vitamin C does two things. Particularly, one thing that it does, it's something that inhibits the cytokine storm through two actions. It immunomodulates, which means it softens that cytokine storm. It's like putting a shock absorber. Okay. The second thing it does, it basically is an extraordinary antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory. And separate from the immunomodulation to lower the cytokine storm, it's an antiviral. It stops viral replication. It inhibits RNA replication, the transport, etc. So the question really that everyone should be asking, we can get into conspiracy theories, we can talk about all of that, but it doesn't really get us anywhere when someone's dying, being put on these ventilators, and we know there's a 90% chance they're going to die. What should be happening is people should be giving high dose IV vitamin C therapy. And so it's like a very, very proven solution, particularly in critical care. People have been using it for many, many years. That's what should be happening. Instead of doing that, not even talking about that, we are basically sentencing those people, talking about ventilators. Who's going to manufacture ventilators? Are we going to get enough? Right? Because what you have is you have fundamentally people, A, the public has been made dumb and fear-ridden, and B, the people in power from the Gates Foundation, from the Anthony Fauci's, from the people circling the president, do not want to talk about this. And it's not just about saving lives for them. If the truth comes out that you can use a very, very low-cost thing called vitamin C, has no side effects, to do this, what will it mean to their long-term business? That's why they don't want to do it. They don't want this being the solution that's plastered on the front page of every mainstream media. This is why mainstream media is not talking about this, because it means that they're going to have their advertising cut. Vitamin C is cheap. It's pennies. Okay, ascorbic acid in high doses. It's absolutely pennies.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about the vitamin C treatment. We have one doctor in New York using it. We have another doctor in Arizona barely being reported on, and they're using it in conjunction with steroid treatments, hydrocortisone and others. I'd like to get your opinion on that, because
hydrocortisone.
Hydroxychloroquine. No. They're actually not doing the hydroxychloroquine. They're doing steroid treatments with vitamin C.
So let me just take a quick break, because we have, as people know, I'm a scientist and a biological engineer, but I'm also running for Senate. If you can, Jason, because one of the things that's going on right now is I just got a little note, we need to get on the ballot, and I just want to share one, take 30 seconds. If people actually go into the website, if you X that and you go into the website, and if you scroll down, what we need everyone to do is, there's a very important thing here. Anyone listening who's in Massachusetts or outside of Massachusetts, just think about the fact that you're looking at someone who's a working class kid who actually knows how to solve problems. The lawyer lobbyists who run this country are the reason we get into crisis like this. The reason we get into crisis like this is you have bureaucrats. And one of the things everyone needs to do, because we need another 7,000 signatures to get on the ballot, because we're not able to collect out there, they literally call the cops on us, okay? When legally we're allowed to collect in both the GOP establishment and the Democratic establishment. Even though I'm running as a Republican, they're scared shitless about me, okay? They do not want a real person on the ballot working for everyone. So what people need to do is, if you go to that website, Jason, if you can show people, if they click on that link, they can literally, we're making it easy, we're spending our own money. If you click on that link, people can literally go into that, and they can give their names. You give your name, your where you live in Massachusetts, and we will actually ship you a package where it takes 2 seconds to sign and mail it in. We, in fact, send you stamped envelopes. But that's something that's happening right now. In addition to me educating people, doing the research work I do, we still have to run for U.S. Senate. We need to get on the ballot. So, Jason, make sure all your audience members know that this is preeminent, because it's one thing I'm educating people. It's another thing having me in the U.S. Senate, and I'll be doing this for 6 years. They're going to have a hell of a problem, because they're going to have a guy challenging them, but proposing real problems and real solutions, showing the diametric opposite of what they want to do. What they want to do is vaccines. What they want to do in everything is lower CO2. Everything they do is a fake problem and a fake solution based on fear and fake science. And you got Fauci right here. So that's what you're looking at. It's a bunch of F's out there, and people should really be F'd off by this, okay?
Yeah, I agree. And we just put your link in the live chat. We'll make sure to do so afterwards in the
that'd be great.
Regular description.
Yeah.
Let's go back to solutions, because you keep talking about how they're pushing for a vaccine, but if you watch something like Event 201, which is the 5-part video series, Johns Hopkins, Bill and Melinda Gates, they perform this at Davos. The same authoritarians that are unelected minions of the predator class are the talking heads that we're hearing about this real pandemic, whether it be the Johnson & Johnson representative, whether it be George Gao of the Chinese CDC, Stephen Rice of the American CDC, and then of course you have Thomas Inglesby of Johns Hopkins himself. They are all promoting the vaccine as the solution, but as the intermediary, what do they want to use? They want to use antivirals, and not what you just said, not the vitamin C, not what I've suggested.
So let's talk about that. So what you have is, one of the things in politics is you have the obvious establishment, which we've pointed out. We went very, very hard against Fauci. Some of my friends are medical doctors are saying, why are you attacking this guy? And I had to educate them. Remember, a lot of MDs have golden handcuffs, so they don't talk a lot. They try to be quote unquote apolitical when they're actually very political. They're part of one of the most biggest political behemoths known as a medical establishment. But nonetheless, we went after Fauci very, very hard to expose this, right? But the other part of this, I think, essentially is that the core of not talking about, right, the actual solutions that are very, very simple solutions. So one is, I've talked about the critical condition, right? Vitamin C versus ventilators, right? Again, it's interesting, 2 V's there. Ventilators versus vitamin C, right? Which V do you choose, right? And over here, now there's a prophylactic, right? So the Indian government, for example, if you're a hospital worker, to prophylactically protect you, or if you were in touch with someone who had COVID, they're saying you should take 400 milligrams. They have dosage ranges, you can read about it, of hydroxychloroquine, okay? So what is that, right? So you have so one is a prophylactic to protect you from the virus if you have the virus, to protect you. So what hydroxychloroquine does, it has 2 mechanisms of action. One is it protects, it's actually 3. One is that it protects the virus from attaching to the ACE2 receptor and getting into the cell. And that's by inhibiting what's called glycosylation. That's step 1. The other thing that it does is, if the virus makes it through, very much like vitamin C, in fact, almost exactly like vitamin C, it stops the RNA replication process, the recombining of the virus particle inside the cell, and the transport, okay? The fourth thing that it does, it also stops the cytokine storm. It modulates it. It modulates the TNF alphas and the IL-1 betas, which are cytokines, from coming out. So it does 3 things. However, it has about 61 side effects, okay? Look, I really, have been very supportive of the President of the United States. I consider him a disruptor, which I think was necessary. However, separate from the Fauci sort of evil, Death Star establishment around him, he still has a lot of these little pharma sharks flying around him, right? Mm-hmm. And those pharma sharks, including MDs, they always want long name things, right? It has to sound complicated. Hydroxy, chloroquine. Now you're doing something. Now you're actually helping people, right? But if you say vitamin D, vitamin A, which will do, frankly, the exact same thing with vitamin C. So if you do vitamin D, what does vitamin D do? It's a thing that destroys viruses. It's antimicrobial. That's why when you go out in the sun, your body creates vitamin D, your body creates cathelicidins, and you literally start blowing up the membranes of the viruses or bacteria.
And let me just stop you there. For those that don't understand how important vitamin D and the sun, the reason there's life on Earth is, look at what they did during the 1918 Spanish flu. In fact, they had a lot of their patients outside so they could get that natural vitamin D and help their immune system fight this, yet that has never even been suggested, even though the weather is getting out there.
The guy who did that, he was criticized. When he started doing open air treatments, the medical establishment critiqued him for doing that. So, but the notion of getting vitamin D it's so simple, right? We have a 6,000 Kelvin degree sun out there, millions of miles away. Everything on the planet relies on the sun. So it behooves people to, it's unfortunate people don't think that the sun is an important aspect of this, okay? But the medical establishment, the pharmaceutical, big pharma establishment must create complicated problems, must create fear, must use fake science academia, who are all, frankly, prostitutes at this point in how they do science. There's a few good scientists, right? But most of them don't get tenure, et cetera. They spit out of the system. But that's what we fundamentally have. So that establishment cannot have the KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. They don't want the KISS principle. They want sort of unfortunately, a dumbass principle, okay? Mm-hmm. Which is make things very complicated, make things very, very paternalistic. So you need the state. So you need a few set of people to tell you what to do. And that's why vitamin D, which will literally be an antimicrobial, and by the way, 90% of the MDs don't know this. They can't fathom this because they were taught, imbued like going to boot camp. You must give this, you must give this, you must give a drug. Mm-hmm. And vitamin A, which literally builds beautiful, sheets, walls to protect the virus, so the viruses don't even get in. And again, 90% of the MDs, unfortunate, victimized medical, big pharma educational training will not teach them this, okay? Mm-hmm. That's what we have. We have an unfortunate entire class of MDs who unfortunately do not know systems. This is why MIT in 2003 created the Biological Engineering Systems Department. It's not biomedical. It's about saying, wait a minute, we need to understand the body itself as an engineering system. MDs don't learn that. They're not engineers. They probably can't fix a plumbing system. They can't fix a car. So you have to really think about it, how much reverence we pay to MDs. They are a lot of nice people in terms of not to them, but their unfortunate, horrible, horrible, horrible medical school education, which is Big Pharma, Inc. education. So we have to recognize that. And I've been fortunate to be able to get all these degrees, all these credentials, that when I say it, it's no longer some new age person saying it. And I think it carries more gravitas to it, and which is good. So I feel like I'm doing a noble service by using my knowledge and my stature to talk about this. And I think when we put out, I don't know if you saw, we put out a tweet which said fire Fauci.
I haven't seen that. I don't know how the guy has a job. But then again,
40,000 people have signed that petition in literally 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And nearly, I believe now 4,000 of those people are MDs all over the world. So we're creating a rebellious force of MDs who are recognizing that they too are hampered. The medical establishment, forces them, treats them like slaves. Mm-hmm. So that's really sort of what's taking place.
Well, I got a question for you then on top of all of this, because especially in the United States, the medical establishment here, Dr. Shiva, has never promoted stem cells, ever. Yet it is used in other countries. And we do have authoritative sources out there saying that mesenchymal stem cell treatment is another way that we could approach this. So I've got to ask you, what is your view on stem cells in general and the possibility of treating the virus with that?
Well, look, so first of all, there's various types of stem cells, right? Mm-hmm. There's the embryonic stem cells, right, which come from embryos, right? Then there's a different type of stem cell, the stem cells which come from your own blood. And there's therapies like PRP, right, where you take your own blood, you spin it, and you get your own innate stem cells to use. People have been using that, for example, athletes and injury. But frankly, we don't even need to go there, right? So stem cells essentially differentiate. And there's a whole new area of medicine called cell therapies, all right, where you use mesenchymal stem cells. And what you're trying to do is you're essentially trying to modulate the immune system and use stem cell therapy to support, for example, T cells or B cells to be created. And the reason that's happening is, again, it goes back to this foundational thing. Big pharma is not making money from drugs anymore. What's a drug? It's a synthetic compound. They spend 30% every year over year, more and more R&D, thinking they're going to find new drugs, and they're going to be allowed by the FDA. Even the FDA is not allowing many of these drugs into the market because of the toxicity. So they're failing. So two opportunities that drug companies have is cell therapy, like stem cells. It's called cell therapy. It's a whole new area of therapy, and the other is vaccines. Both of those vaccines are considered biologics. They don't need to go through as many tests. And I believe some aspects of cell therapy may also be considered that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't need to go to as rigorous testing. But let's just step back from all of that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can use potentially stem cell therapy, but let's go back to fundamentals, which are not sexy solutions, okay? Vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin C, make sure your thyroid's functioning right, make sure your gut is functioning right, you're digesting your foods. We don't focus on this. Why? The question I want to reiterate is, why are we not focusing on solutions which 80,000 papers have been written in the scientific literature on vitamin D? You can look at the enormous amount of work that's been done on vitamin C, right? The enormous amount of work that's been done when your thyroid doesn't function right. And your thyroid doesn't function right as you age, and also if you're not getting proper iodine and iodide. Mm-hmm. And you get all sorts of problems if you eat something and you don't have enough hydrochloric acid and proper enzymes in your gut to bust up that food. Your food putrefies. And we also know there's thousands, tens of thousands of papers that's written what happens when you eat a high sugar diet. Okay? These are fundamentals. Mm-hmm. So we're not, and what happens when you eat rancid oils. Okay? So these are like basic things that what we've started educating people out at a broad level. And people need, this is where we should focus on. Now, God forbid you get in a major accident. I don't know, you get in a horrible car accident, knock on wood, that doesn't happen to anyone listening, right? Well, then I would say bring out the military, okay? Bring out the Air Force, you know? That would mean you need surgery interventions. That means you may need, you know, serious pain medications. But what I'm talking about is that entire intervention I just talked about is Western medicine. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the history of Western medicine, it came from war. It was about putting an injured soldier back on the field. That's where Western medicine came from. It did not come from saying, hey, Jason, I want to help you take care of your body. In fact, the Eastern systems of medicine, look, I happen to have the fortune that I studied at MIT, you know, big degrees, you know, all that stature, but I also studied in a small village and other places with great teachers in traditional systems of medicine, right? Mm-hmm. Where if you look at that, every disease has 6 states, okay? In traditional, like in Ayurveda and Siddha, a disease, before it becomes into the 5th or 6th state where you see a unfortunate tumor come up or you see some horrible disease, that disease goes through 6 stages of etiology, okay? And those 6 stages, typically, traditional systems of medicine, they try to knock out the disease in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th state before it comes to the 5th or 6th stage. Mm-hmm. Western medicine proudly wants to wait, incentivizes you to come to the 5th or 6th stage, and then will give you drugs and drugs and drugs. So they don't want to solve problems in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th stage. They don't want to be preventative. They don't want to be supportive to the immune system. Because if you take care of your immune system, everything takes care of itself.
I agree 100%.
And that's pretty much it. All disease is frankly one disease. If you listen to the wisest people for thousands of years, food is medicine. All disease is one disease, which is your immune system. And if you support that immune system, your body will support itself.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I think there's a lot to be said there. First of all, I'd love to get your take on what kind of a diet would be appropriate and encouraging during these times. I know it's tough for people because they monetarily right now, financially, we're in a bind. A lot of people are locked down. They can only get certain goods and services. A lot of things are sold out. But the president has also now actually talked about zinc as being one of those things. Now, currently for myself, you know, I'm taking vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc in the morning, magnesium, all these things now several times a day. I am getting my workout in the morning. I'm doing it with my nieces, whom I take care of. We're trying to keep our mental spirits up as well as our physical health. And, you know, that's been my suggestion to people, you know, because just like you said, in Western medicine, yeah, it's great if I just endured physical trauma. You know, if I just got knocked out on the street because a light pole went on me or somebody shot me in the leg and I need my knee saved, etc., that's where I want to be. But if I have some kind of a degenerative condition, just like you said, they usually like to get you into that 5th, 6th phase, and the solution always seems to be big pharma, not nutrition, not exercising, being like, oh, well, your thyroid's not working and that's why you're fat. You know, I can't tell you how many people have told me that, and I'm like, well, maybe if you were treating your body better and you were exercising, you get that thyroid function back. But that's something that's usually not discussed in mainline medicine. So In your
Well,
opinion,
listen, the reason this is not done, it's really, 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 when you really look at problems in the world, it really comes down once you understand, if you look at some of the greatest artists, or if you look at some of the greatest designs, when I write code or when I'm solving a problem, I do also a lot of art, I do a lot of writing. You find over and over again, the mastery comes when you eliminate all the nonsense and it's about the simplicity.
hmm
You find, but getting to simple is not easy. It's you out of a morass of complexity, you have to find simplicity, and simplicity emerges through a lot of hard work, right? Well,
thank
there's
you.
already been a lot of hard work that's been done. The nature has already done a lot of hard work over, if you believe evolution, over billions of years, if you believe natural design, if you believe God has done that hard work, a lot of hard work's already been done to bring us to this point.
hmm
And so one of the things that I start with again is education. You know, the core thing that I've always been interested in, the reason I did all those engineering degrees, when I created the first email system in the world, that was a system. The nonsense that came out from the controversy comes from a bunch of idiots who don't understand what a system is. Email, we're not talking about simple text messaging. It was the interconnection of all these parts, the inbox, the outbox, the folders, BCC, all those things. That's email. I called it email. I defined it. I have the first US copyright. The reason I bring that up is a systems understanding is very different than a reductionist understanding. So when I finished my PhD at MIT, I always wanted, one of my goals was to go into medicine, but I hated the way that medical doctors are trained. They don't understand the systems approach. So that led to my journey in 2007, Jason, back to India for 2 to 3 years, where I came up with a completely different way of viewing the human body. You may want to go to this website called Systems Health. So when I went back after my PhD at MIT, I wanted to really unravel traditional systems of medicine. And what emerged out of that was a whole institute I built. I went to India and I realized that the traditional systems of medicine were really an engineering systems approach to medicine. And what we found was that if you look at Eastern medicine, it actually matches one-to-one, guess what, with control systems theory, which comes from Western engineering fields. So what I'm trying to say is there's a whole different way of looking at the body, not as organs, not as tissues, but looking at this as a body that moves information, matter, and energy. That's called transport. It converts information and matter and energy. That's called conversion. And then it stores or provides structure to information, matter, and energy, okay? Transport, conversion, and storage. And I built that into a whole new way of understanding not only this body, but any system in the world. And that became the foundation of systems health. I used to teach that course at MIT. 300 people used to show up on a Thursday night, MDs, et cetera. And we retrained people because if you saw, the MDs have their way of looking at the body, and the new age people have their way, and they all think they're not understood. These people egotistically look at the acupuncturists and the yoga people, and the yoga people don't feel they're being understood. So we created a whole new way, and that was one of the most popular lecture series at MIT. And then I wanted to make it accessible to more people. We used to offer it at the Chopra Center, making hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I never felt good because my great-grandfather taught me that you should make knowledge as accessible. Then we made it accessible to more people. And then what I've done is, if you go to the Shiva for Senate website, I'm going to be announcing this today, but I'll give you a quick preview. You'll get sort of a quick announcement here. When people support our website, I want to, separate from winning the U.S. Senate seat, the goal in this journey, if you go up to the top and people click donate, there's a link there where I want to teach people all this incredible knowledge. Yeah, if you click on that link, there's a little book that'll come up, which teaches you how your body is a system. It's called System and Revolution. It's really me congealing 40 years of work. If you don't want to get it, you don't have to. And there's a tool I created called Your Body, Your System. So if you go to that site, Jason, Your Body, Your System, getting to your point when you said, what do I eat, right? What's the right diet? So if you go to, you can go to yourbodyyoursystem.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can type that in, yourbodyyoursystem.com. As Jason's doing that, but fundamentally, everyone is a unique body. The goal of real medicine, this is why medicine cannot be state demanded. So we created a tool as part of the systems health because we had to make it easy. It says, be happy, be you, right? What that means is, if you scroll down, is Can you understand your body as a system, Jason? Now, your body has different forces of transport, conversion, and storage. No different than a laptop is a very different system than a mainframe computer. No different than a Ferrari is different than an SUV. You don't put the same fuel in those things. So this approach helps you understand very quickly how your body is a unique system, which is that red dot. Then you can figure out how you're deviating from your system. Okay, if you scroll down, that's that black dot. Okay, so some of us don't get enough sleep. We're under stress. And the goal is to bring the black dot back to the red dot. It's no different than a plane that's off course. And then you want to bring it back and you figure out what the inputs are. So I designed this to teach people. And we used to charge thousands of dollars people pay. So what we did was, you say, if you give you $25, we give it to you. One of the things I want to do is, getting back to what you're saying, given the economic hardships people are under, one of the things we're going to do is, I'm going to announce it right after this, whatever people can afford, people can get. Because a friend of mine was saying 40% of our staff is laid off right now. Okay. So the goal is, if I can educate people how the body is a system in a whole different methodology, they can actually go educate their doctors, frankly, okay? Because they don't get a system, because their model of education is organs. Lung is out, replace the lung. This is out. Everything is a siloed model. This is a whole different language to understand the body as a system. So that's what the goal here is. We need to, again, go down to first principles. If everyone started seeing their body as a system, that it has a place that it likes to be. That's what that red dot is. The red dot for you, Jason, may be different than me, okay? Because of my background, because of my genetics, etc. Now, the issue is, how do you get the body back? So the red dot in many ways represents your homeostasis, when your immune system is strong and functioning well. You don't eat right, you eat a lot of sugar, you have pre-existing conditions, you're off. Well, you know what? There are infinite ways to bring that black dot back to the red dot. There's not one diet. What's occurred in America, you have all these diet gurus. One day eat raw food, one day do keto, one day eat this, one day everyone's selling their books because that's what the media empire wants. They want to create their new star and promote their new book. The truth is that ultimately, when we were out in nature, if you watch gorillas and stuff and primates, when they get sick, they actually eat about 170 different botanicals. They know to go eat a little piece of that aspirin tree, okay? We used to have something called intuition. We used to know when I felt good, right? You used your brain to feel good. Wow, I feel great. I just worked out. I sweated. Man, I feel great, right? That's where we need to get people to. And when people start connecting back with their own bodies, they're going to make the right decision. Now, this tool I created, it's frankly a powerful tool, but it's basically to teach people where they should be. What is their norm? Most people have never even experienced health. So they don't even know what it means to feel good anymore.
And I agree with that, unfortunately. And I want to go back to the part where you said hard work. We live in this instant gratification society that we would rather use cognitive dissonance instead of our own tuition, that this magical pill is going to solve everything, or this injection is going to solve everything, other than, oh my God, I'm going to go to bed at a certain time. I'm going to get up at a certain time. I'm going to jog for a certain time. I'm going to hit the weights for a certain time. And that's work, man. You've got to set a schedule. You've got to get up. You've actually got to get through that. And then you might not be able to have that Twinkie you want because we are so over sugared, and you might have to choose, something that is better for you. My question is,
well, one of the things, Jason, is I don't know if you know, they did some of the very interesting research that's been done on longevity. You know what they found? The number one reason people live long. The number one reason.
Let's hear it.
It was, there are people who smoke and drink and they live 110, 100. The number one reason they found was community. People feeling safe and secure, okay, not under fear. So number one was community. The next one was some type of vigorous exercise. Okay, people climb mountains or they physically worked. The third one was very interesting. Many of these people had some type of fermented drink, okay, which you may call alcohol, but it was a fermented drink which supports the gut microbiome. Now, all the other stuff, food was there, but it's an important thing to understand. It's clear that if you're under massive stress and you're in your massive fear, your adrenal glands are shot, okay? In Chinese medicine, we call that the Jing, the kidney meridians, and it's a water element. and the water element is a control system to control the fire element, which is inflammation. So when your adrenals are shot, your cortisol is all over the map. You can't control inflammation. And that's what leads fundamentally to issues with the immune system. So stress, the amount of stress people endure from this fear mongering, okay? Mm-hmm. You cannot underestimate that, because and people feel isolated from other people. This is a number one source of most issues with health. Number two is, are you getting exercise and sunshine? These things are important. And then you talk about what you're putting in. One of the things that people found is some type of fermented drink. My great-grandfather, who lived up to 100 and something, used to work in the fields until 93, 94 years old. First thing he did in the morning was he would drink a fermented rice thing, because what is that doing? It's empowering your microbiome, those 60 trillion bacteria in your gut.
Now, does that act as a probiotic because of the fermentation?
Yeah, because what you do is, look, B12, which is very important for your body, gets created by these very powerful bacteria. Your body makes B12. Mm-hmm. Acidophilus, right? You've heard that term? Mm-hmm. Well, what does that term do? Break it up. Acid, philus, things that like acid, things that like acid. If your gut does not have enough acid, most people, and they say, oh, I have acid reflux. It's not acid reflux. You don't have enough acid. Because as you age, you reduce your hydrochloric acid, okay? Mm-hmm. Again, most MDs don't learn this. They learn the opposite. So they put people on antacids. Okay, it's a whole discussion we could have.
Well, actually, that is an interesting one, because, I've heard people with angina, and then you talk about acid reflux all the time. You're saying that is caused by less acid in the gut.
Yeah, there's some wonderful research that it's as you age, you reduce your hydrochloric acid levels. So what's fundamentally happening here is that you have a medical educational system which is flipped on its head, okay? The medical students do not really learn the body is a system. It's a system, it's a system, it's a system. And what is a system? It's a set of interconnected parts from which the whole emerges. They don't study it that way. They study parts. That's why you have a cardiologist, a nephrologist, right? A neurologist, an endocrinologist. Go down the ologists, right? Mm-hmm. Because they study things in isolation. So you could go and you have a problem over here, or you could go and have a problem and you may get sent to 5 or 6 specialists, because the insurance, everyone makes money off of that. No one is looking at you. And the reason they're not looking at you, because it's all about big pharma. Find this disease, this medicine. Triage it to a disease. That's wartime medicine.
Well, they're telling us we're at wartime. And that's the other problem. This is something that I've been talking about. We only got about 10 more minutes with you. I want to thank you so much for your time. Shiva, the number 4senate.com is where you can go to support him. But, let's go over what they're telling us. They're telling us that this is going to be depression level. They're showing you pictures of Rosie the Riveter, only it's not World War II, and both people are home, so it's going to be Ronnie the Riveter as well. They're invoking 9/11, and that's why I've said this event, no matter how you spin it, is a slow rollout of 1929 meets 9/11 is COVID-1984. So, sir, I have to ask you, if you were put in charge today, how would you tackle this in this country?
Well, it's laid out in that 2 or 3 page letter I wrote to the president. First is, this is a systems problem, right? It's not, so if you look at the whole country as a system, right? It's not just the immune health. It's not just the economic health. It's both, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't have one guy like Emperor Fauci controlling the discourse, because I've heard from very close people or economists very close to this administration. They've shared with me what a disaster, that we're heading into a grand depression if this continues. And they say that the administration is not listening to them because they can't say Fauci's full of shit, okay?
Okay.
So that's why, if you notice these videos I've been doing, is because of the fact that most academics won't expose Fauci because he owns them. Most academics in academia are owned by the NIH, because 50% of the funding of the NIH goes to the biological sciences. So they own every university president. They own every academic in this country. And the academics are essentially modern day, they practice the oldest profession, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not going to say anything. So fortunately, a guy like me can come out who has a degrees, who does the science to talk about this. And that's what's fortunate for me as well as everyone. We have an opportunity to really have a discourse. So it's a huge opportunity. So that's what comes back to this foundational idea that we need to go back and recognize it's about science. And we're not going to have real science as long as we suppress freedom, as long as we control discourse and debate. You end up getting scientific consensus, not the scientific method. So you get fake science, and from fake science, you don't get to truth. And what people actually are doing fundamentally in every problem, by the way, it's not just on this issue. You look at the climate, quote unquote, climate change issue. You look at the issue with gun violence. You look at the issue with, immune system. Every issue you look at, the researchers over here, their freedom is suppressed, controlled. If you look at the Harvard School of Public Health, it's known as the T.F. Chan School of Public Health. They got close to $500 million from Chinese, very wealthy Chinese from China. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the guy, there's a video, if you go to the T.F. Chan School of Public Health, the guy who funded that, he's actually telling that the most important discovery for mankind has been vaccines. Okay? So the Harvard School of Public Health, which molds health policy in this world, for the world, which is right over here, about a couple miles down the road here, or less than that, Harvard School of Public Health is in many ways controlled by money that came from China. What is the Chinese model? Top down, top down, top down.
Well, let me just stop you. The Chinese model is one of such authoritarianism that in this country, when South Park decided to take a dig at them, they not only banned that episode, they banned 20 fucking years of a comedy show. That should show the authoritarianism.
And why didn't the people in Hollywood protest that?
And not only did, I certainly did, but again, we didn't protest.
But why did people in Hollywood not protest that?
Because they're owned by China, and that was the next point I was about to make, right. Is that for me, I'm not going to play the blame game because all these governments have lied, right? But when we're supposed to listen to the World Health Organization and the CDC as the authoritative voice, and they're now demonetizing channels like mine, or just taking down videos like mine, if I dare question them, and on that same panel of Event 201, what did you have? NBC Universal sitting there deciding what was going to be an authoritative source and taking action on social media to silence people like mine in a fake coronavirus pandemic from a pig in South America, by the way, folks. October 2019. Check it out yourself. What you have is a system where China gets away with saying 3,000 plus people died and that's it in our country. Meanwhile, we visibly locked down 60 plus million people, and the NASA footage clearly shows the entire country was shut down from February 10th to 25th. What was their solution? Well, it was an economic one. Let's take our slave labor forces from Western China, the people we literally have in our re-education camps, and we'll put them in Western companies like Apple, Nike, BMW, Samsung, Sony, and Volkswagen. And this has never been a major issue in this country. Instead, you hear that parroting of they have it under control and the supply chain is no longer broken. Never talking about the lengths that they took against their own people, which were as scary, authoritarian, and dystopian as humanly possible.
All right. Right.
I mean, that's how I feel about that, sir. I mean, yeah. I don't think we should be beholden to an organization, the WHO, that is promoting Chinese numbers that on their face seem very fake to me.
I think, Jason, in closing, the couple of things I want to share is there's a lot of, we're at an interesting inflection point in human history, right? Mm-hmm. When the Industrial Revolution took place and we created the manufacturing line, what we actually created was a beginning of robots, okay? It was AI, which was humans on an assembly line, and everyone was supposed to do one thing at a time. And that model has essentially, people didn't like that, right? Adam Smith even talked about how very few people read Adam Smith, but if you go to Wealth of Nations and you go even to the middle of it, he actually had an attack against, quote unquote, that kind of capitalism, right? That it would destroy human lives if you told a person that all they had to do for the rest of their life was put a little top on a beaker all their life, right? Whatever that was, an assembly line. What we have today is an interesting choice. Are we as humans going to become robots, automatons, and head into the dark ages, or are we going to head into the golden age? And the good news is, the really good news is at least over 50% of the world population still works with their hands. They have brains, they have common sense, they build things. The people, when we go out to collect signatures, we'll go to the quote unquote educated areas, and these people are so scared, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go to the working class areas. People come and sign our signatures, right? I mean, to make them feel good, we'll wear gloves and we wash the pen and all that. But you see this big difference. Working people, by the way, most working people who voted for Trump don't believe in the quote unquote climate change nonsense, okay? They know something's intuitively wrong. That's why the notion of a popular democracy is still valuable, because we still have a lot of people who still do the nuts and bolts. The people who are the dangerous people are the vulnerable educated elites, because they are programmed and they think they know better. And the people who support them are the lawyer lobbyists. And that's the people that entire class of people need to be destroyed. We need to destroy that entire notion of lawyer lobbyists. We need to, one of the things that, when I looked at the system, our call to action is truth, freedom, and health. And how do we get there? It's not just a slogan. How do we get to truth, freedom, and health? Number one, we need to ensure digital rights. And the entity that should be doing that, and I have a proposal for that, is the U.S. Postal Service, which you probably heard about. The Postal Service is really the engine that was created. And if you go down, we have the whole thing. We have a Digital Rights Act that we put together. We have a manifesto everyone should get. It really lays out what the fundamental issues are of infrastructure. But if first is the Citizen Science Act. You can just hold it there. The Citizen Science Act says the way we're going to get to truth is we have to make sure that individuals, we as people, can become citizen scientists, which means we have to smash the academic establishment model. If they get funding from us, that data is yours and ours, and we should be able to have access to it and be able to do our own research. Next is the Digital Rights Act. To your point, you getting kicked off YouTube, et cetera. The Postal Service, which was created by the founders to support free communication, they weren't supposed to be in the postal mail business. They should be offering us email, YouTube, Facebook equivalents, which will be protected by the Constitution of the United States. That's the other part of this. And the third part of this is the Health Rights Act, that we need to decentralize healthcare. We cannot have a top-down mandated medicine. And that's what we're right in that inflection point, Jason. We're at a point, this is not about a virus. This is about freedom versus slavery. That's what this is about. Will it be the forces of truth, freedom, and health that win, or will it be the forces of power, profit, and control? And that's what everyone should think about. And the good news is everyone has a lot of power. You know why? Because there's more of us than them. Okay? So this is the issue is, how many people can we educate with the revolutionary knowledge? Because when you have revolutionary knowledge, then you can go to the core. And that's the humble sort of catalytic act I'm trying to do. If we go down to understanding systems, that's like that's like splitting the atom versus burning wood. Okay, you get a much powerful reaction. And that's what people need to understand. What I'm talking about here is to teach people how from a nuclear perspective versus from burning wood all day. Okay, and that nuclear knowledge is understanding that everything is a system. And once people understand that, no one can fool them. But if you don't understand that you're a system and these things are interconnected, you're always going to be fooled. So we have a lot of very foolish, educated people who come out of these institutions with a degree, but they don't study anything about anything being a system. So they're essentially creating automatons. So we don't need to get to robots. We already have robots. We're literally at a juncture. Are we going to go to a golden age where human beings exist, where it's not someone on an assembly line, which is what China wants to do, make everyone automatons? Are we going to be free human beings, or are we going to be slaves?
Well, I can't wait to have you on in the future and talk about that.
It's great being here, Jason.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I know you've been on for an hour, and I really want to thank you for your time. I think we could have a whole conversation about automation, the singularity, transhumanism.
Yeah, but the guys who write the singularity stuff, they're sort of, Ray Kurzweil.
Yep.
He's living in his little ivory tower. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We already have AI. We already have automation. It's just done with human beings, called carbon-based beings.
I couldn't agree with you more. Again, this has been really insightful, and I want to invite you on anytime, anything breaking. You know, my audience had actually been all over me last week to have you on. And during
Okay.
this week, why I hadn't had you on, I was like, guys, I already scheduled them. You know, I can't wait to have you on again. Shiva4senate.com. If you're in Massachusetts or know somebody that does, you have family members there, please pass along this website. We'll have it in the description on the afterplay. I've put it in the live chat many times. Is there anything else you'd like to close out on?
I think what we need is, you know, I'm a very practical person in addition to sort of reaching for the stars here. Right now, we need to get on the ballot, Jason. Tell all your people to go to that page. If they know people in Massachusetts, to fill it out, and so we can send them nomination papers. By the way, the reason I just got a text, if you put 02138, but you put 02138, like the letter O, then it won't work.
That's
okay?
the problem. Okay.
People need to know numbers versus letters.
All right, let's
Okay.
hope that's it. Dr. Shiva, it has been a pleasure,
Thanks, Jason.
and
You're great.
I will be
Thank you.
talking to you
Thanks
soon.
for the opportunity. Best
Thank
to you and
you.
your audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. All right, that was Dr. Shiva, everybody. I want to remind my fans, people that want to support my work, that this is how I'm doing it. I've been fully demonetized. 5, 10, 15 bucks, it means the world to me. I'm going to be doing a Ask Me Anything later today. So if you get your questions in over here, we'll make sure to do that, and then we'll go through it like normal. Make sure you're subscribed, thumbing this video up. I've also got the Rockfin, where I've still left this up for free. The exclusive from this week is still free. I may do another exclusive. I don't know. I have to leave my house and go file charges against somebody now. I am now directly being attacked by a mentally insane person who is now calling me all the time and accusing me of just wild shit that I've never been involved in. So I hope that people realize I'm a grounded human being. My sources are real. I will discuss issues with anybody I think that is genuine. However, when people are obviously insane, are obviously attacking me, and obviously making lies up about me, I just don't give it no mind. And that's why I think this has been so important. You know, there are a lot of people out there that for some reason still don't believe this is happening. I hope after this interview with Dr. Shiva, you're very well aware that something very real is happening. With that being said, guys, I absolutely love you, and I'll see you on the flip side.